Good evening from David Booth, Kansas Memorial Stadium in Lawrence, and take a look around. I'll show you right behind me. This is the final time you will see the booth looking like this. Of course, KU beginning its stadium renovations following this season. In fact, they'll begin fairly shortly here, but this is our Sunflower Showdown, Kansas State Wildcats, Kansas Jayhawks instant reaction show as the Kansas State Wildcats continue their dominance in the Sunflower Showdown. We got horns honking behind me, but they beat the Kansas Jayhawks for the 15th year in a row. 31-27, the final score tonight here in Lawrence. And frankly, this one was one of the better matchups we've had over the last few years. The last time one was this close, the last time there was a one-score game in this head-to-head rivalry, you've got to go back to the David Beatty days. Peyton Bender at quarterback for KU in a pretty tough one a couple of years ago against K-State. That was a one-point win for the Cats over in Manhattan. This one, though, Kansas State comes in here, and frankly, KU was the better team for at least a decent portion of this game. Kansas State got out to an early start. If you were watching the game, you saw it, the huge pass play to open things up and then punching it in just a few plays later. K-State got out to a great start, but then it was the KU offense that really came alive. Kansas, in fact, scored on 4 consecutive touchdown drives. From its second drive of the game all the way into the first drive of the third quarter, KU scored a touchdown on every single one of those drives, and it looked like maybe this was the one. Maybe this was the year when KU got off on the right foot, made the right plays, came up with the big plays in the big moments, and knock off Kansas State, but it just was not to be. Now, if you are a Kansas State fan, you're looking at this game probably as, what did we do well? What did we change? What did we fix going into the second half that completely changed this game in our favor? If you're a KU fan, and I know I've seen and heard a lot of this already, you're probably feeling, we should have won this game. We should have been able to hold on, take advantage, and just not shoot ourselves in the foot, and we come away with finally winning a game in this head-to-head series. Let's talk about the Kansas State side of things here first, and you have to give K-State's coaching staff credit, because coming out in the second half, they looked like a much different team, and one of the big reasons why, in my personal opinion, they started to rely more on the running game, and that's no disrespect to Will Howard, who obviously, as we know, has had a tremendous career at Kansas State. He's the program's all-time leader in passing touchdowns. In fact, he added on to that record here in this game today with a pair of passing scores. However, the run game was their most effective offense in this one. Following KU taking a 27-16 lead on the first drive of the third quarter, K-State from that point on had 138 rushing yards between that next drive and then their final drive of the game, which ended with a handful of, we'll call them long knees, team rushes for negative yardage to burn off a lot of extra clock. That took away 25 yards from their final total, but 138 yards over the third and fourth quarters, keeping it on the ground. That included Will Howard scampering for a few yards, including the game-winning touchdown right over here to my left here at the booth tonight. It was DJ Giddens, the Junction City Project, who had a fantastic game in this one. 21 carries, 102 yards, had a touchdown as well. He was sensational in this game. Howard made some plays with his arm. Jace Brown had a great day catching the ball as well for K-State, but it really was the run game that got that offense going. In fact, in the same end zone I'm standing in right now, one of the biggest plays of the entire game came early, or I should say midway or so, through the third quarter. Backed up here near their own end zone, Kansas State starting a drive. Will Howard threw in, I don't even know if you can call it errant pass, right over the middle of the field, and it hit KU linebacker Rich Miller square in the hands, and there was nobody. There was about as much green grass as you see behind me right now here on the David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium turf between him and the end zone, but he couldn't hold on to the ball. One snap later, it was Treshawn Ward, the senior running back transfer from Florida State, 52 yards on a carry, and just a couple of plays later, K-State got into the end zone. And that brings me to why KU fans are probably feeling like this is a game you should have won, you made too many self-inflicted mistakes, and that's the reason why you came out on the wrong side of things. That dropped pick six by Rich Miller, it almost certainly would have ended up being a touchdown. You can't make any sort of declarative statements normally in a game because so many different things can go wrong, but that ball hit him straight in the hands, and there was no one between him and pay dirt. Then a little bit later on, early in the fourth quarter, in fact, just about the first 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, KU got back-to-back stops. Mello Dotson intercepted a Will Howard pass after K-State had gotten an interception a drive before, and then KU forced a 3-and-out. In fact, they got K-State to go backwards 12 yards before forcing a 3-and-out, including a huge sack from Austin Booker. But then, after that, disaster struck again, and it was Trevor Wilson, who had a muffed punt a couple of weeks ago, who muffed another one, and it ended up with K-State ball at its own 45-yard line. Just 6 plays later, the Cats were able to get into the end zone again, and that was when Will Howard ran into the end zone from 15 yards out for his rushing touchdown in the game, which ended up being the game-deciding score. So for K-State, the game plan in the second half, absolutely tremendous. They did such a good job, and their defense really stepped up because, as we mentioned, KU had those 4 consecutive drives with a touchdown, but K-State found a way to answer, and those 3-3-5 fronts, like K-State employs, have given KU problems throughout the year, facing a third-string quarterback. They ended up making the right adjustments. They ended up making the right plays, and they come away with the win in this one. And if you're KU, you've got to feel like this team's probably kicking themselves after this one. A great effort. Lance Leipold lauded the effort, lauded the resolve of his team during post-game comments just a little bit ago. But it's going to sting if you had got that close. You were up by 11 points in the second half, 27-16 after the first drive of the third quarter, and you didn't score another point after that. Devin Neal had a huge day on the ground for KU. He was really the superstar of this game for the Jayhawks offensively. 18 carries, 138 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's the third 3-touchdown rushing day of his career. It's also the most yards he's ever had in a game against Kansas State, now in 3 meetings with the Wildcats. But the big story offensively, even more than that performance for KU, was Cole Ballard, the third-string quarterback, the former walk-on who got his first career start. Now, we were told after the game just a little bit ago by Lance Leipold that Jason Bean was healthy enough to play in this game. He was cleared medically after he got injured last week against Texas Tech, was able to play today, but because Ballard played more in practice, that is what led to him getting the start, his first career start tonight for the Jayhawks. He was not bad by any means. 11 of 16 passing, 162 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. One of the picks was a bad one. It was not a good throw, lofted up about the opposite sideline from where I'm standing right now. Not a good decision by Ballard. The other one, 4th down and 5 from the 11-yard line, had to make a play near the end zone, down by 4 points, turned it over, and it was a great play by Marcus Siegel of Kansas State to jump up for the ball, pick it off, really know where Ballard could go with that one. So plenty of opportunities out there for KU. They just could not capitalize on enough of them. Meanwhile, Kansas State did just the opposite. They made all the right plays when they mattered most, even overcame some of their own mistakes in the second half. Will Howard, as we mentioned, threw that interception. They had a 3-and-out. They had their own struggles, but relying on Giddens, the running game, and making the right plays on defense spelled doom for KU, and granted K-State their 15th consecutive win here in the Sunflower Showdown. Now, for Kansas State, this means they are 8-3 on the year. They've got a chance for a 9th win and a 7th conference win coming up next weekend when they take on the Iowa State Cyclones. Meanwhile, for KU, they've still got a chance to get to 8 wins on the season. They will take on the Cincinnati Bearcats. They're going on the road to Nippert Stadium coming up next Saturday as they look for their first 8-win season since all the way back in 2008. But that's going to do it. And again, one final look at David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium as we have known it for over 100 years at this point. Plenty of people not super sad to see this one go, but for some of us who have covered a lot of games here, it is going to be much different for the Kansas Jayhawks coming up for their home football games in the coming years. But again, your final score from Lawrence tonight is the Kansas State Wildcats with a 31-27 win over the Kansas Jayhawks in this top 25 matchup in the Sunflower Showdown. We'll talk about this game plenty more coming up Monday on 580 Sports Talk. Yours truly, Jake LeBon, Dan Lucero, will be breaking this one down. All aspects from the KU perspective, from the K-State perspective, everything in between. We'll take a look at the rest of the Big 12 from this weekend, and of course, get you ready for Monday Night Football as the Chiefs take on the Eagles coming up on Monday. That's 2 to 6 Monday afternoon on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9. Until then, this is Brendan Dzwierzynski signing off for our Sunflower Showdown instant reaction show here on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube. We'll talk to you on Monday.